Welcome to another episode of Prepper Talk Radio, and we're super excited to bring to you news of the prepared. And we're radio for the ready-minded. We focus on God, family, and country, and we're going to share this episode is we're going to be talking about the will to survive, and also some of the things about some of the struggles that men go through, and the support system that we need. All part of that will to survive. So before we do, though, want to just remind you about our Jace Medical affiliate. We love Jace. I was actually on the phone with Jace today. They just launched, like in the last 30 days or so, Jace Daily. So if you go to jacemedical.com/daily, in fact, you don't even have to do the /, but just Jace Medical, JASE medical.com. And the daily is your traditional everyday meds are now available for you to get a year's supply. So if you are taking a medication right now and you're nervous about being able to have a supply of it, if the grid goes down or if anything emergency happens, you can now go and get it, or at least see if they have it available. They have 75 medications available right now for almost a myriad of different health conditions and concerns. And so if you go to Jace Daily, type in your medication. If it pops up, it's one that they cover. If it doesn't pop up, it'll give you a chance to write it in a box. So hopefully they'll get it and make it available as soon as possible. But check out Jace Daily. It's going to be, I think that's one of the big questions we get on a regular basis, I do, is that, hey, I got the antibiotics, but what about regular everyday medicines? What are we going to be able to do about that? Well, now we have an answer with Jace Daily. So thanks to them. We're going to have Dr. Roland on here, hopefully again in the next little while, to talk more about it. So stay tuned for that. The other one is ITM trading. With the way the economy is going, with the way things are happening, we want you to realize, at the very least, get a good education on gold and silver and precious metals. And ITM trading, there's no obligation. If you go to our website that's in the link below, which is learn.itmtrading.com/Prepper Talk Radio, you're going to be able to schedule a call with them, learn a little bit more, and there's no obligation. So just schedule the call, talk to them, and see what they have to offer. I think it'll be worth it. So without any further ado, one of the our source material today comes from Survivopedia, and there was an article there written by one of our friends, actually, Cache Valley Prepper, about the importance of the will to survive. And just before we kind of turn it over to a discussion, just kind of an overview real quick. In the article, it talks about a lot of people will think that that physiologically or physically, those with the most muscles or the strongest, whatever, will survive first. And that's a huge factor. Don't get me wrong. But what that talks about in there is that actually they found that those that have a psychological will to win, or the psychological strength, are the ones that actually beat out those with the physiological strength. So I know I kind of, little play on words there with that, but those that have the will, the mental strength supersedes physical strength, but physical strength is a key element. Is that about right? Did I
yeah, absolutely.
From the article?
Yeah. Cache is a good friend of ours. We've known him for a lot of years, and he's a good guy. Definitely read his stuff. And I found this article today, and I think we have talked with Cache about this in the past, and so I thought it'd be appropriate to talk about today. But my biggest concern, my biggest question about this topic is, how do I get the practice on this topic? How do I build my psyche to be able to handle a true emergency? I've shared one experience in the past that gave me a little bit of a taste of that, coming upon a car accident when I was young and not knowing what to do, pretty much frozen. That 80% of people that freeze up, right? I had no idea what to do. And since then, I've been moving forward with it. But that's the thing that interests me the most, is how do I need to go get out on a boat for a year and survive to develop that psychological, like Salvador Alvarenga did.
438 days.
So how do I do that? That's what I want to try and discover in our discussion today.
Well, you and I both met him. Sorry, Parrish, you didn't get to meet him, I don't think.
No, I did. That was the year I met you.
Oh, that was the year.
Okay. Yeah, that was the year I came. I was your gopher.
That's right. That was my last.
I'm always the gopher. Yeah.
And we flew him out. He's just one of the kindest people. And he talked a lot about that he actually was one of our keynotes. He talked about that experience, and here's the book, 438 Days. It's kind of mind blowing to think about what he went through and how he was catching water, how he was catching food, how it really was to the point of like, okay, well, what do I want to keep living? Because he was alone for so long. But he's like, no, I have people who rely on me. I have a purpose. I will be found. And as soon as he started believing again that he will be found, it got easier. And it's like, wow, okay. So to your point, like coming on that accident, or, you know, I've been in accidents. I've been first one out an accident a number of times, and I'm grateful to have like my first aid kits and have my wits about me. But like going through the hard times, it's having the mindset and purpose is what fixes the mindset. Purpose is what helps. Like you go back to Simon Sinek and now discover your why, right?
Mm-hmm.
Business wise, it's like, what is your why? Why are you in business? Why are you doing things? But like through a disaster, there's so many people that we talk to. They're like, oh, if it gets that bad, I just want to die. Why?
Yeah.
Well, they don't have a why. They don't have a purpose, and purpose helps with mindset big time. I think it's one of the most overlooked things that people, they just don't really put their effort into it now and creating a stronger mindset. And that's just going to be worse on them later.
I mean, even one of the things that Salvador talks about there is that he did contemplate suicide. He wanted to just say, forget about it. But he realized and remembered and had a foundational faith in God that, you know, that he'd read in the Bible. And he was, I think he's a Catholic, and he realized that there was a doctrine there that you don't commit suicide. That's just one of the things you just don't do. And so that commitment that he'd made to his faith carried him through that period of time when he was contemplating some of the most severe, things to do. And that's something that we all need to have. Like, what is your faith as well? What's going to be your will to live? And purpose is a part of that, and absolutely a part of that. It's a critical part of that. And so that's one of the things that you should think about as you're kind of contemplating, what would you do in a situation where maybe you were alone and you had to survive? And, or even if you weren't alone, like you were in a group, and what would you do to survive? Because that article talks about out of 100 people that are in an emergency situation, 10 of them shouldn't even be there because they're just worthless. 80 of them will stand around wondering what the heck just happened. And then 10 of them will be warriors to fix it and try to survive and make accommodations so that the rest of the people can survive. Of those 10, 9 of them are kind of be whatever, but there's one that kind of stands out and says, hey. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with not being the one, but don't think that just because you're, you might be the one, but the reality is that you might be in that 80 or even in that 10 that's like, shouldn't even be there because they're so worthless to the cause. Yeah. So just be careful about that kind of thing, and be ready and be thinking and be pondering. That's the whole idea here, is just run those what ifs and prepare yourself mentally.
Yeah. How do you move from that 10% that just completely panics to the 80% at least, and then up toward that 10% or even the number one spot? I think that's absolutely possible. And, what I was thinking, I know that Castrat mentioned in his article as well, is that it comes through experience, right? It can come from our very childhood as we grow up doing difficult things, right? And that could be, on a simple hike or something like, could be learning the piano, doing something difficult that requires persistence and wanting to give up and getting through that, breaking through and recognizing success or realizing success on the other side. One of the hardest things I ever did in my life was about 10, 12 years ago. Went to the deepest cave in the state here, and it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And at the end of the day, climbed out on my own, doing this pretty much all by myself, and realized that I probably could have continued going a little bit longer, even though it was extremely difficult. And so, that's just one of many little things that I think can help us along that way to improving our psyche. Say, I can do this. This is hard. I've never done it before. I have very little experience with it, but realizing that, okay, I'm going to give this a try. I feel I can do it, and having that, like you said, have that faith, that persistence, that purpose to do something simple like that compared to living 438 days on a boat.
Yeah. Well, your two examples. One, you talked about playing piano, right? And the other one is you're climbing through the cave. Like it totally kind of, maybe it didn't aha for anyone else listening, but for me it was an aha because it's like, okay, I quit piano. I tried to do accordion. My parents wouldn't pay for it. I played the drum. And when we couldn't afford it anymore, I had to quit that. But then I played soccer for years, and I didn't really quit soccer as much as I finally was old enough to be on a wrestling team. And I was like, done. I'm like, I'm going to wrestle. And I know it's different seasons for sports and everything, but I was just like, I wanted to spend my preseason, my postseason working on wrestling for the next year. And so it was like finding things not to quit on, right? Well, you didn't quit on piano. Now I've heard you playing. It's fantastic. And you're always like, well, I'm not as good as I'd like to be. And I'm like, you're still fantastic in my opinion. And here's the thing. It's like that perseverance, like anyone who's done lessons of anything and they've wanted to quit, but they kept going or participated in something like going to the gym, New Year's resolution, you go to the gym and 3 days later you've quit for the year. Like, or did you keep going? Anyone who can do that, you're already a step ahead of most people. That's that's from the point of the piano lessons. There's that, but also the point of the hike. Like there was a study they did with rats where they threw them into the water and they treaded water and treaded water and treaded water and treaded water until they gave up. Have you guys heard of this? And then they pulled them out and they're like, oh, okay. Well, then they threw the mice back in and they treaded water indefinitely longer.
Wow.
They said it was like ridiculously, like it was so long, and then it was like 80 times longer is how much longer they can go the second time because they were expecting someone to come save them. And I thought to myself, holy crap. If you can get to the point where you believe someone can come and help when you're past all your ability to do anything, you can last that much longer. You can endure that much longer. Yeah. And I think that's where we as Christians have an edge, hopefully.
Yeah.
Is because we are told to do everything we can, and then the rest is up to God. And then if we can just hang on and trust in Him, right? It parallels with that. So we can go a lot longer than we think we can when we put faith in action.
Yeah, belief is so
it just
powerful.
made me think of that. And I'm like, man, what are all the things where I've actually had to actually do that? And the best example I can share that I feel comfortable sharing is actually when I did PrepperCon. I loved it, but I hated doing PrepperCon because I was losing so much money in my normal career, having to take 6 months off of the year. I was emotionally beat up. I was mentally beat up. By the time PrepperCon was over, like I would disconnect my phone and I would go to sleep for a few days, literally asleep for a few days. And I'd wake up long enough to like fuel a little bit and then go back to sleep because it took everything out of me. And it was harder every year because it got bigger. And the third year, the Lord's like, you're done. And I was like, what? When it was all over, He was like, yeah, you're done. Good job. You did what I asked you to do. And what's funny is even though He told me that before, and He told me it again at the end of the event, and Paris was there when that happened. And He remembers me breaking down, and I'm just like, what do I do now? What do I do with my life? But Lord, I had all this purpose. I'm sorry if I'm getting choked up, but it was powerful because I went a lot farther than I ever thought I could have with that. And I helped impact a lot of people's lives. We all did. And it was a beautiful thing to see and witness, but it's true. Like if you put your faith into the Lord and you let Him carry you through these things, you do everything you can, because there's no way I could have got 13,000 people there on my own.
Yeah.
Each and every year. Like we just got back from an event last week that maybe had 2,000, not two people, but 2,000 people. Like, I don't even know. It wasn't very big, but it's like the amount of work that goes into making these things happen and doing it on the scale that we did it on was astronomical. And I could not have done that on my own, but that is an example of if you put your faith in God, if you do what He tells you to do, and you put everything you have into it, whether it's life or whether it's a survival situation, He's going to extend your ability to stick with it. And He's going to provide whatever it is in forms of mana that you need, whether that's emotional, mental, or something else, help to get through it. Like he always has, and he always will.
I think that's one of the reasons why I love hearing stories like that, Scott. And then your story and the story of this gentleman who survived for 438 days is because if a human being can do it, and I'm a human being, that must mean I can do it too.
Mm-hmm.
At least the capacity is there. And so hopefully that inspires somebody to say, look, if somebody else did it and could do it. And I don't think this guy on the ship had a whole ton of experience. He's no survival expert.
Mm-mm.
He just had a will to live and keep going. And there's all kinds of people. I mean, we saw a movie just several, maybe 10, I don't know how old it is now, but that movie 17 Hours, I think, where the gentleman was hiking and got caught in the crevice and he cut his own arm off or hand off and then hiked himself out. I mean, that's another example to me of that will to survive, the will to live, and to do whatever it takes to get out. Now, not everybody's going to have the same, story that's going to be wonderful. There's people that I'm sure that have, succumbed to the pressure and gone all the. In fact, the guy's partner on the boat ended up dying early because he just didn't want to eat anymore because he couldn't eat raw food or wasn't willing to. And then, but Salvador, whoever it is, he went on to live and was rescued. And that's true of all of us. So in any situation you're in, there's always a solution. So if you feel like right now, and let's say your survival situation right now is you just lost your job and you've got a family that you need to feed and you need to put food on the table and you don't have a clue how you're going to do it and you're scared to death because the bills are due next month and you have no way to pay them. Apply that mentality to this situation that you're in. You can do it. Find a solution. There's ways to negotiate. There's ways to make it work and to find mercy, even among, even mortgage companies. I have a buddy, it was years ago. He couldn't pay his mortgage. So he called his mortgage company up and says, hey, I'm going through this whatever situation. They let him live in the house for several months without paying. So obviously that's not the situation for everybody, but there's ways. Just always remember that and always keep in mind that there are ways there's solutions. There's a solution to every problem. And if you're just willing to quiet your mind of the anxiety and the panic and the fear, if you're willing to quiet your mind from all that noise and which is the enemy, frankly, which is the devil and his kingdom trying to keep you off balance. If you quiet all that and just focus in and say, God, I've got a responsibility and a stewardship to my own life, to my family, to my kids, to my wife, to my husband, whatever it is, how can I magnify that? How can I be obedient to that? And you will be amazed at the answers and revelations that you'll receive as you open yourself to that. At least that's been my experience.
Yeah, there's a quote in here in this article. It's from Lawrence Gonzalez, another book called Deep Survival. And I want to learn more about this. It's turning fear into focus is the first act of a survival. And I guess I kind of experienced that in that when I was going through that big cave. I reflect back on that, and yeah, it was all about focus. Getting my own butt out of there by myself that's really all I was focused on. That was all I was focused on. It was, just to give you a quick overview. It's cold. 38 degrees, you're wet, so you have to move. You can't stop and rest. You have to move to stay warm. And 4 hours of climbing ropes, and doesn't seem like a long time, but it was
a long time.
It was very difficult for me. But so that gave me a clue, a glimpse of what this is talking about, right? Turning that fear. And absolutely, there was some fear there. Absolutely. Being very cold, 1,000 feet underground, having to climb ropes to get out, turns into really intense focus. And I think I have a bit of a glimpse of that. So not shying away from opportunities to experience some pain, to experience some fear is probably key into understanding how to truly survive in a real survival situation.
Yeah.
So I want to read this from the book, A Fight for Life, because it goes back to the mindset. So Salvador wasn't alone. He had a a fellow worker, Cordoba. They worked together. This was a fishing boat for work. It was a small boat, but it was the two of them started off. But Cordoba died. Cordoba gave up. Right before Cordoba gave up, as they floated in the Pacific Ocean, Cordoba was sure he had tempted fate when he ignored the warning of his own demise at sea and began repeating, "I am going to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. No one will ever find us." Calm down. Have faith, Alvarenga urged. "You're crazy," Cordova screamed. "No one will ever find us." Well, less than 3 weeks later, Cordova one day just made the drastic decision to stop eating. They were catching fish and turtles and birds, and they would divide everything up in half. They would put the blood in one, like in bags and in cups and buckets, and the food in other places, and they would actually eat everything raw and then drink the blood. That's what they survived on. And when it rained, they would catch the rain in a tarp and drink that, or just in the boat and drink that. Like they just did whatever they could to survive. And eventually Cordoba just gave up and died. Whereas what saved Salvador, he kept faith. And he actually kept thinking about like, hey, when this is over and I get back to normal life, I'm going to get a car. And he put weird little things out there on the end of like things to look forward to. And he played games with himself to have a focus. And that is what keeps us going, is looking forward to something. Aaron Ralston, when he had to cut his hand off to get out of that position and then hike and then eventually crawl back to civilization and have people show up and be like, hey, let's help save this guy, right? What was it that kept him? Well, he says he had a vision while he was in there, and it was a vision of his future, and he had a son. He was married and he had a son, and he's like, that's why he cut his hand off and climbed out, because he had a purpose so much greater than just himself now. He was looking forward to something that was going to happen. And if we think the apocalypse or any tough trial that we're going through is all that's ever going to happen, it's easy to just crumble than to think of what great thing is coming next.
It's true.
Have that focus of what blessing will come after this trial, and I promise you'll do a lot better.
Another cool thing that he talked about in that article, and it was that this the guy he was kind of poor. He grew up poor, didn't have a lot of the luxuries of life, and because of that, he kind of had to think on his feet. He had to think. He had to be open to being creative ways to survive and to live and to do things. And sometimes in our comfort, in our wealth, honestly, as especially those that are in North America, in our comfort and wealth, we just rely on other people to, make solutions for us. And we just go along with it. And we just enjoy the benefits and the fruits of the labors of all those who've created solutions, not realizing or ever really developing the skill within ourselves to think critically and to think creatively and to find solutions and then put them into play. So I think sometimes it's important, in our comfort, to maybe go put ourselves in a weekend of, hey, I only have a few things here to survive. How do I make it work? How do I get creative to make things work? And so I feel like that skill set is some way that will give us some confidence. And then that confidence can help us build the will to survive when we're in a place where we're not, once we're actually in a real emergency, we won't be panicking as much, and we'll be able to say, you know what, I've kind of trained a little bit for this. I kind of have a couple skills. And now here we go. Let's sit. We're in the test. We're in the test of it.
You're making me think of Liam Neeson. I have a very specific set of skills, right? I have a very specific set of skills that will help me survive the apocalypse. I have hope. I have faith.
Yeah.
Like, what are your specific set of skills that will help you?
That's true. Well, guys, thanks. We're going to cut it short. This is a little bit shorter of an episode. We had a bunch of business that we did, and we're excited for what's coming. We've got some great things that we're looking forward to with the content and with some events. Actually, there's an event in Utah County in July, in the middle of July. We're going to be thinking about. So stay tuned for that. But you've been listening for the last 25 minutes or so to Prepper Talk Radio, radio for the ready-minded, where we focus on God, family, and country. And we're grateful that you chose to listen. We're grateful that you stayed with us. We look forward to having a community with you. Please check out our socials. Go to our website. Our email list is going to start cranking out emails pretty soon to folks to stay informed. So if we don't have your email, make sure we get it as soon as possible. But until we meet again, stay ready and be ready. And we'll talk to you soon.
See you next week.